I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I could use your help, which you probably already saw. And I'm not just saying that for clickbait, I could actually use your help. Just in terms of helping me order and prioritize what watches I should be reviewing over the next few months. But let me start at the beginning. Now, over the last few years, every time I get a watch into review from a company, I usually give that priority over watches that I've bought or maybe ones that were sent in by a viewer to check out. Just because usually there's a deadline with those and I can get to whatever the ones I bought whenever I get around to it. But when I'm preparing the review, when I'm getting the footage of the watches, the macro shots, the B-rolls, maybe some slider shots, I've gotten in the habit of always doing those in batches. I figure if I'm, breaking out the camera here or maybe turning on the studio lights, setting up a little bit of a scene, that I might as well do it for more than one watch. Just seems more efficient that way. So there's always a watch or two that have priority, but then I always throw in a few others that, just haven't gotten footage of yet. And I've been doing this over and over for the last couple of years. And over the last couple of years, I've got a lot of footage you guys haven't seen yet. In fact, I noticed a few weeks ago that my work hard drive was getting pretty full. And looking into it, I got about 20 some watches that I've fully shot and have yet to review. So all the hands-on stuff, all the B-roll, all that is just done and waiting. Now, this doesn't mean I'm just going to be able to knock out review after review. I just have the footage I need for the watches. After that, I usually like to just gather my thoughts and think about what you guys really need to know about them before I even record myself talking about it. Because for me, that's really the point of the review, to give you guys what you need to know and not just say whatever pops in my head. I'm not a fan of just turning the camera on and doing it that way. And in the end, I still need to edit all of this together. But that still means I got about 20 different watches that are a third or halfway done in terms of a review. So it's a good head start. Which is why I thought I'd put this video together and just quickly go over these watches that I have just stored up. And I'm hoping you'll let me know down below which 2 or 3 you're most interested in. It'll help me prioritize and order what I should review. And I should mention that these watches are going to run the gamut from affordable to luxury, with most of them sitting in kind of the mid to high end range. So let's get this going, and these aren't in any particular order. And we might as well start off with the first Christopher Ward I ever bought. One I've had for a while and never reviewed. So this is the C65 Brown Super Compressor. It's one they don't make anymore, and it's one that's kind of become a cult favorite evidently. Because I actually wore this when I went to the Christopher Ward showroom, and the guys working there were really excited to see it. Evidently they've heard about this one, but they've never actually seen it in person, and this was their first time. However, while they're not making this specific one, they are still making a blue version, and there is an elite version also available. So there is still some relevancy here. Especially since it's a great dive watch that I think gets overshadowed by Christopher Ward's other great dive watches. And I think it's one of the more interesting ones they've ever come out with, as it's an actual super compressor and not just a super compressor style. And speaking of Christopher Ward, I don't quite have it yet, but I will have the new Blue Dune coming in to review as well. Next up is the Timex Giorgio Galli S1. And this is a watch I've been obsessing over since it first came out, which was a few years ago. Just because it's a Timex unlike any other Timex out there. Now, when it first came out, I thought it was a bit expensive for a Timex. But over the last Black Friday, I saw that they were clearing out these black versions. So I decided to pick one up to finally check it out. Now, unfortunately, this all black stealthed out one is a bit difficult to photograph. But even with that, I think it's still an interesting watch to talk about. For number 3, we have a blue Black Bay number 58. Yes, I said a Black Bay 58, which a lot of you probably wouldn't expect to see on this channel. And in a lot of ways, I think this is kind of the BMW 3 series of the watch world. So there's a lot of info out there on it, there's a lot of people who've already talked about it, but I think I actually have something to add to all of that. Because when it comes down to it, I'm not a Rolex Tudor fanboy who's gonna gush all over it just for existing. And I'm someone who's spent a lot of time in the affordable watch world, as well as with some really nice micro brands. So I may have a little bit of a different perspective on this one. And honestly, that's also partly why I wanted to review it. Because every time I look at something like a Manta or anything $1,500 and above, there's always a few comments out there saying, hey, why would I buy this over a used Tudor? And even though Tudor's going to be a lot more expensive, even used, now I got an actual answer for you. For number 4, there's the new Nodus Sector II Pilot. This one came out a few months ago. Now, while I haven't done a ton of reviews, I've always been a fan of Nodus. So when they released this one a few months ago, I ordered it to check out, as I've always loved the idea of a pilot dive watch hybrid, kind of like the Sporks or Mark's homage of the old Seiko Spork. And that, I think, is what a lot of people loved about the first Sector version, and now they've made some nice improvements to this one. Next up is the MMI Four Seasons, which, depending on when I edit this, I may have already released the review. This is one MMI lent into me, and it's kind of an interesting, affordable sports watch. One that's a little bit Citizen Chronomaster mixed with a little bit of Grand Seiko, as it has a washi paper dial like my Citizen, but they're doing it in 4 vibrant colors representing the seasons. And to me, that's something straight out of a Grand Seiko playbook. So it's kind of an interesting, affordable take on that. For number 6, we have a Casio Oceanus. Now, it's been a long time since I reviewed a Casio Oceanus, and I've really been wanting to. And it's kind of a long story, but I accidentally wound up buying 2. And this is the first one. It's the new 20th anniversary version of the T6000. And what's special about it is going to be the colorway, with this kind of green teal color. This has got some similar functionality to my S5000, where it's a chronograph mixed with a dual timer. But it is a little bit more affordable than the S5000, and it has this really odd, unusual dial layout. It's kind of chaotic, but I don't think I've ever seen another chronograph with this layout. Although as interesting as this watch is, I think the next Oceanus is more interesting, and that's the S400. Now, this is a simple 3-hander, but it's one of the more expensive 3-handers for the Oceanus line, which means it's going to have this crazy thin titanium case and be even more well made than some of the S100s or the T200s. So it's a really cool watch, but it is a little bit pricey for what it is. For number 8, we have the watch that just happens to be on my wrist, and that is the Lone Star edition of the Jack Mason Stratotimer. And if you've been paying attention to the channel, you'll know I've reviewed the Stratotimer twice before. I reviewed the original one when it first came out, and then a year later, I took a look at the special Dr. Pepper edition, of which I still love. I love that Dr. Pepper watch. But the point is, I've already reviewed the watch twice, so I can't really think of any good reason to do a full detailed review of it. However, this Lone Star version is sort of a version 2.5 of the Stratotimer, whereas the others were version 1s. And over the last few years, they've addressed almost all of my concerns with the Stratotimer, and I'd like to make a video just to go over the changes. Now, as a side note, this Lone Star watch is one I bought for myself, even though I still have the other 2 that were sent to me when I did those reviews. And if you didn't know this, I'm not someone who usually keeps multiples of the same watch around, so that should tell you something about how much I like the Stratotimer. Number 9, the Grand Seiko SBGA 471, also known as the Soko Frost. And yes, this is a spring drive. So this would be a full review as well as go over my first impressions with Grand Seiko and a spring drive. So go over what's great about them and the few things that are not so great about them, like value retention and the fact that Zaratsu polishing just scratches if you look at it funny. For number 10, there's a Sinn 556, or rather the 556 AR, meaning that this is the Arabic version with the red second hand, one of the more desirable colorways of the 556. Again, this is already a pretty popular watch where there's already a lot out there. But after buying it, I really want to talk about it and really try to go into and understand why it's such a big thing. I mean, it's good, if not a great watch, but honestly, I'm not quite getting the whole living legend status some have given to it. Now, for number 11 and 12, we're going into Formex territory. And number 11 is my 39.5mm Radiant Bronze Reef. Now, Formex is fantastic. I'm just going to throw that out there. Yes, it's an absolutely horrible name. It sounds like some sort of bug zapper or antacid or something. But Formex is one of the best smaller brands out there, and they're doing some really interesting things as well. And this dial is proof of that. It's one of the things that makes this version of the Reef really interesting. Now, this is a bronze dial that has a vertical etching, something I've never quite seen before. I mean, yes, I've seen bronze cases plenty of times, but never a bronze dial, and never one that's been treated with an epoxy or a lacquer to make sure it never patinas. So it's a really interesting watch, as well as just a fantastic diver. So that's the Reef, that's the diver line for Formex. Whereas the Essence is their sports watch, their Gata watch. And this is the 39mm Space Gold version. It's a very interesting watch, and it's an interesting case shape for a Gata watch, with an interesting spring suspension system. I'm not really sure the point of it, but it's there. But the dial here is the most interesting thing about it, as it's a meteorite dial that's electroplated with rose gold. If you remember the anniversary Wise with the 24 karat gold dial, this watch is kind of like that. But it's in a little bit of a different direction, where the gold just brings to life the unusual, unique pattern to the meteorite below it. Up next is the first Phoibos I've seen in a while, and maybe the best one yet. It's the new version of the Kraken that's a little bit smaller than the last, and the Kraken being kind of their more Seiko monster-like watch. Something a little different than your typical dive watch. Now, Phoibos sent this to me and it's being released soon, but I'm not quite sure when, sometime this month. Phoibos did something similar to what San Martin did with their SN0144, or what Zealous has done with a few of their other watches, where they take a pattern textured dial and then fill it in with lacquer or epoxy, smoothing it all out, as well as helping the colors just really pop. Speaking of the San Martin SN0144, that's up next. And this is a watch I picked up during the last 11/11 sale. So far, I haven't got around to reviewing it, and I bought it just because so many people told me I needed to check it out. And back during the 11/11 sale, the price was pretty hard to beat. Now again, there's already a ton of information out there on this one, and I really don't want to be just another cheerleader with an affiliate account. So if I do anything with it, I'm not going to do a full detailed review. I'll do something a little bit different, maybe a versus video or a 5 reasons to buy, 5 reasons not to video. Because it is good, but it's not quite the end all to be all that some have said. Now, speaking of good, let's go back to Grand Seiko. This is the SBGN 005, and I'd say it's one of the most underrated Grand Seikos out there, except a lot of people know about this one. It's kind of one of those watches where when you know, you know. And you also know it's been discontinued for a much stupider looking version of it. But the short version here is that after reviewing my Chronomaster, I started wondering about how good some of the quartz Grand Seikos were, which is where this GMT beauty comes in. Now, for those of you wondering, yes, it is perfectly lined up, it's just that the camera is not always perfectly centered. But I gotta say, have you ever seen a quartz secondhand move with such forceful determination? It's kind of interesting to see. For number 16, I got an Oris 41.5mm Aquis caliber 400. Now, this is a watch I've had for a while and was really my first sort of steps into higher end and luxury. With a lot of my reason for getting it was Oris's in-house caliber 400 movement, a movement with a lot of promise. This is one I've talked about a few times before, but I've never quite got around to reviewing it. And at this point, it might even be too late to review, as there's already a new Aquis date and a new larger caliber 400. Both have been recently introduced. Now, this one is currently for sale, but I think it's only a matter of time before the smaller new version comes out. Although, there really isn't much of a difference between this one and the newer versions, so it could still be a lot to talk about here. And it is really a great diver with a really interesting movement. And after owning it for so long, this really would be a long-term owner review. Whereas this Oris wouldn't be a long-term review, this is more of a short-term thing. As recently I've been able to spend some time with one of the big crown pointers with their 403 movement. A movement that is based on the caliber 400 above, but made more for their crown pointer watches. Of which, coincidentally, Oris just announced some newer versions of. So the relevancy of this one might also be a little bit in question. But again, killer looking watch with an interesting movement. For number 18, let's get back to some more affordable watches. With this one, the solar version of the Momentum C-Quartz 30. This is one that a few people asked me to check out, so I ordered one. Now, if you're not familiar with it, it's one with an interesting TV connection, which is why some people are referring to it as the Magnum PI watch. The short version is that the founder of Momentum's family used to own a company called Chronosport, and back in the 70s they introduced one of the better quartz divers out there, a watch they called the C-Quartz. It became very popular and was really popular among divers, and it was also chosen to be worn by Tom Selleck in Magnum PI for the first 3 seasons, which, given the character and his history, made perfect sense. Now after that, they did this whole storyline where he wound up getting his dad's Rolex GMT Master, but a lot of people still remember that C-Quartz, which is why Momentum has now brought it back in a regular quartz, solar, and automatic versions. Next up, we have the Guard GMT from the Imperial Watch Company, and this is one that was currently lent to me by a brand. It is currently sold out, but more are coming. And it is kind of an interesting GMT diver. I've never seen a dial layout quite like this one. As well as there's some pretty interesting colorways, including this root beer version. For number 20, and we're almost done here, it's the EDC-1-A from EDC Hardware. This is another watch that someone asked if I'd review, and I picked it up because I thought it was interesting. Now I have been on a little bit of a solar diver kick, but there are 2 real reasons why I wanted to check this one out. The first of which is that it's from a brand new brand, and a brand that's actually a spin-off of Lumtech. And then the second reason is that it's using a brand new type of solar movement. Now this is a movement that I think Mark has recently started using in his new solar diver, and it's one where the solar cells are actually located in the rehat, or the outer chapter ring instead of the dial area. Meaning that the dial of these watches doesn't need to be transparent or really simple like a lot of the other solar divers are out there, freeing up brands to make some more interesting designs. Now, this one isn't really taking full advantage of those interesting designs like, say, Mark is, but it's still a pretty affordable and interesting watch thanks to that Lumtech connection. And last, but certainly not least at 21, is the Longines Hydroconquest GMT. Again, long story with this one, but the short version is that a lot of people have really been talking up Longines lately, with this watch as well as the Spirit Zulus. So when the opportunity came along to check one out, I wanted to see what all the talk was about, as well as see if it really lives up to the hype. And it mostly does, but at the same time there's some shortcomings here that a lot of people don't realize if they're not paying attention to the microbrand world. So there you have it, all 20 plus, I think it's like 21 watches that I have pretty much ready to go for a review. And if you could let me know down below which 2 or 3 watches you were the most interested in, it really helped me out. So as you can see, I got a lot to potentially be working on over the next few months. But if there's something else you'd be dying to see, feel free to mention that down below as well. There's no guarantee I can get to it, but if it's interesting enough and I can fit it in, I'll try. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.